They sharpened their blades in the dark, assuming you wouldn't notice. But they never imagined that the exact sword they made for you would be the one that slashed through their own kingdom. They intended to break you. They want to see you crawling, devastated, and pleading for mercy. But what's the problem? You were never designed to break. They underestimated you, thinking your stillness for weakness, patience, and fear. They believed they were the hunters, but now they're the ones being chased by their own failure. This is the terrible fact that keeps them up at night. You were never simply another target. You were the only thing they couldn't control, the one force they could not control. You have the power of a hurricane, silent at first, yet unstoppable when released. That's why they're enamored with you. That's why they attempted to bring you down, because your very presence haunts them. While they were busy conspiring against you, they piled falsehoods on top of dishonesty. They're building their dominion on the foundation of treachery. Something was occurring behind the scenes. Their own downfall was already in progress, and suddenly the walls are collapsing. The folks who chuckled while they created traps for you are now stuck. The same people who wished you harm are seeing their own lives disintegrate. Their failure is not a coincidence. It is not bad luck. It's not a coincidence. It is the irrefutable and relentless power of consequences. Catching up with them. Some call it karma. Some call it justice. But whatever you call it, one thing is clear. It never misses the mark. They assumed they had an unlimited amount of time to play their games. However, the clock has run out. The mask has slipped. They exhibited phony power. Gone. And now they're scurrying. Desperate. Suffocating from the weight of their own acts. And you're still here. Still standing. Still climbing. Because no matter what they did, they could never remove what was meant for you. And here we are, on the verge of revealing a reality they never intended you to know. They attempted to delete you, but now they are the ones being wiped. Their time is over, and their fate is decided. But you're only getting started if you've ever felt the weight of their plots, the sting of their treachery, yet still managed to rise. Hit the like button, subscribe, and drop 999 in the comments. This is the force of ultimate judgment, the indicator that the tables have turned and there is no turning back. Now let's break this down, step by step, for if you're genuinely one of the chosen, you will feel compelled to stay to the finish. That setback isn't simply a possibility. It's occurring now. Let's get to it. Number 1, the tragic miscalculation of power. They loaded the deck, rigged the game, and laughed in your face, confident that they had already won. But here's the issue about cheats. They consistently forget that the house always wins in the end. And you are the chosen one. You're the house. They felt they have power. They believe their wealth, influence, and connections made them untouchable. They strode around like monarchs, certain that they could make the laws and remove anyone who stood in their way. To them, you were only a stepping stone, a problem they might encounter on their journey up. But this is where they made their fatal mistake. They believed they had influence over someone who was designed to endure the impossible. You see, genuine power does not scream. It moves silently. And while they were busy making noise and displaying their so-called supremacy, you were becoming the storm they didn't see coming. That is what distinguishes the selected from the others. You don't need to prove yourself, since your very presence threatens their basis. This is why they targeted you. It never mattered what you possessed. It was about who you were. Unshakable, unbreakable, a force beyond their control. That terrified them. So they planned, schemed, and used every weapon they possessed against you. They believed they were fighting flesh and bones, a simple opponent that they may defeat. But they didn't understand they were up against something far larger than themselves. They had no concept how to fight. At first, it appeared that they were winning. Their techniques appeared to succeed. You were forced down, isolated, and cornered like prey. They rejoiced, believing they had buried you for good. But here's something they forgot. The chosen do not break. They develop. You were not buried. You were planted. And while they were laughing, believing the game was done, you were establishing roots deeper than they had ever dreamed. And their time is up. The empire they created on deception is collapsing under them. Their falsehoods are catching up. Their former alliances evaporated. The authority they flaunted passed through their fingers like sand. And the greatest part? They did it to themselves. Nobody needed to push them. They raced right off the cliff, believing they were flying. They're scurrying now, attempting to retake power and avoid penalties. However, playing a game without rules always catches up with you. They misjudged their opponents. They wagered against the house, believing they could scam their way through. But you weren't even playing their game to begin with. Number 2 is the ruthless boomerang of divine justice. They assumed they were throwing blades, but they were actually tossing boomerangs. And as those blades flew back, they did more than simply cut. They took everything. They were so concentrated on bringing you down, on watching you suffer, that they never considered the possibility that this might all come back to haunt them. But that's the thing about dishonesty, jealousy, and hatred. It never remains where you threw it. It's going in circles again. Harder, quicker, and deadlier. When they conspired against you, they unintentionally set their own demise in motion. Every lie they told, every plot they devised, every treachery they planned. It was like drawing back a slingshot, and every ounce of power they used against you simply increased the likelihood that it would hit them harder. At first, they believed they were winning. They watched as you struggled. They watched you in anguish and relished every moment of it. They were confident they had influence over you and had finally broken you. They chuckled in their circles and spoke behind closed doors, enjoying their alleged success. But this is the bit they didn't see coming. They never had control over the conclusion. While they were celebrating their victories, a storm began brewing above them. The same traps they've set for you, they're now caught in them. The same lies they told are now being exposed, as is the harm they desired upon you, swallowing them whole. The finest part, you never had to move a finger. You didn't need to seek vengeance. You didn't need to fight back. You didn't even need to speak. Your silence was their greatest nightmare, because despite their loudness, recklessness, and desire to see you fall, you were untouchable. That's what made them upset. The awareness that no matter what they tried, nothing would stop you. Now, they're scurrying, seeing all they've constructed shatter into nothing. Their reputation was shattered. Their power is gone. Their freedom is slipping gone. Because when you set out to ruin someone who was never intended to fall, you don't just fail. You become a victim of your own onslaught. And when the boomerang lands, it does not miss. Number 3, when ego becomes the enemy's executioner, they walk like giants, heads bowed and chests puffed, believing they controlled over all they touched. However, the higher they went, the thinner the air became, and their own ego became the noose around their neck. Ego is a potent drug. It blinds, it deceives, and it destroys. And for those who opposed you, vanity was the worst poison. They thought they were untouchable, that their power, rank, and connections rendered them unstoppable. They believed they had control over the game. However, they were unaware that they were only one move away from checkmate. They watched your hardships and chuckled. Look at them, weak, alone, and broken. What? They did not know. You were not weak. You were learning. You were not alone. You were reconstructing. You were never broken. You were only growing stronger and quiet. This is the problem with ego. It persuades fools that they are above consequences. It makes them reckless, straining boundaries. They have no business crossing. They were dissatisfied with authority. They desire control. They weren't pleased with their success. They intended to destroy anyone who endangered their sense of superiority. However, when you question what you don't comprehend, you sign your own death sentence. They believed that their lies, manipulation, and attacks would eliminate you. They cheated, stacking the odds in their favor, certain that the game was always rigged. However, ego inevitably reaches a breaking point, and it is here. Their potency gradually dwindles. Their impact is diminishing. They trusted their buddies. They turned their backs. The prestige they established, crumbling in before their eyes. They believed they were untouchable, but reality is revealing the truth. They never had control, and the cruelest irony, you didn't even need to fight back. Their own hubris got them to this point. Their sense of superiority kept them from realizing that they were their own greatest enemies. They never recognized the threat, not from you, but from a mirror, which now compels them to confront who they have become. Number 4, God transforms their prison cell into a public spectacle. They strutted through life, untouchable and indestructible, convinced that their might could suppress the truth forever. But now the stage is set. The lights are on, and the entire world is witnessing their final performance. A fall so violent that they didn't see it coming. They planned to trap you, cornered and forgotten. They operated in the shadows, pulling strings, setting you up, and doing everything they could to keep you down. But here is the irony. They were merely making their own prison. Now, the very people who strode arrogantly, acting as judge, juror, and executioner over others, sat in a jail with no way out. Some of the doors they used to bang shut were now locked. The authority they exploited was taken away in an instant. This isn't simply punishment, it's exposure. Their whole decline is a public show. They lived on deceit, narrative control, and bending the laws in their advantage. But there's no more hiding from the reality. No more flashy outfits, flaunting riches, or lying their way through life. They are reduced to a number, sitting behind bars, compelled to confront the monster in the mirror, the chosen ones. They don't need vengeance. Karma does not whisper, it roars. And as they sit in their hard reality, grappling with their own guilt, you are rising higher than ever. They believed they had buried you. They did not comprehend you were a seed. That is what eats them alive the most. Not only the walls surrounding them, not only a loss of power, it's the reality that, despite everything they did to harm you, you're still alive. Winning, thriving, untouched. Their jail term is more than just punishment. This is a warning. A message was scribbled in their humiliation, broadcast for everyone to watch, because no one can escape what they have created for themselves. They created their own ending when they came after you. Number 5, the assassination plan. This backfired horribly. They intended for your throat, but they overlooked one detail. When you come for the selected, the knife always ends up in your hands. They did not just wish to inconvenience you. They planned to utterly destroy your tranquility, reputation, and future. They wanted you shattered, pleading, and erased, and their preoccupation with your demise became a full-time occupation. They researched, followed, and murmured in the shadows, tugging every rope they could. But the trouble with building traps for someone like you is that you didn't just wander into their plans. You were walking through flames and came away unscathed. The chosen ones don't just withstand attacks. They reveal those who attempted. That was the part they didn't expect. They believed they had power, yet every action they took against you was a step toward their own demise. Their strategy seemed perfect on paper. They were confident, certain that their falsehoods, manipulations, and army of helpers would eventually trap you. They were playing chess in solitude, confident that this time they would win. But here's something they didn't comprehend. The chosen ones do not participate in the game. They turn the entire board, and everything they've created starts crumbling. They forged phony partnerships. Gone. The reputation they hid behind was ruined. They employed influence as a weapon in the past, currently working against them. What was intended to be your downfall became their demise. Now, they're the ones fleeing their own falsehoods, fleeing the repercussions, and fleeing the traps they created for you. And the greatest part, you didn't have to fight back. They fell beneath the weight of their own depravity. Their collapse was always in the cards. They just refused to see it. However, they now have no option. They expended all of their efforts attempting to eliminate you. And now they are the ones disappearing. And you're still standing, thriving, untouched, because the reality is they never had the ability to destroy you. They only have the ability to destroy themselves. Number 6 represents the ultimate role flip from rulers to devastated. They manipulated the chords, believing they were the puppet masters. But now that the performance has ended, they're the only ones bound in their own web. They used to sit high, dictating the rules and calling the shots, as if they had the last word over your life. They managed, dominated, and schemed in quiet, believing that authority was permanent. You were simply another impediment, someone they could shove around, use or dispose as appropriate. However, authority based on deception is fleeting. They assumed they were crafting your finale. However, they failed to grasp that the pen was never in their hands. Now the tables have turned, and they're drowning in the very storm they caused. They previously determined your fate. However, they no longer have power over their own. They are imprisoned, helpless to prevent what is coming. The same techniques they used to persuade others proved ineffective. They rely on the same alliances. Gone. They maintain the same level of confidence as when they were at the top. Fear has replaced the previous emotion. They spent years manipulating people's lives like they were gods. They never witnessed the moment when they became pawns. The game didn't just switch. It was always intended to expose them in the end. What's even more upsetting to them, you didn't have to move a finger as they were witnessing everything pass through their hands. You're on a rise. The position that they attempted to deny you is yours. They attempted to be respectful. It is returning tenfold. The future they believed they could ruin is now stronger than ever. It was never about vengeance. Balance was being restored. They thought they were untouchable. But no one can avoid the consequences of their own conduct. The doom they desired for you is now staring them in the face. The best thing is that they didn't see it coming. Number 7 is God's quiet tactic to kill his adversaries. The most deadly maneuver is not an attack. It is a pause. While they were celebrating their win, you were merely witnessing them walk into their own death. There's nothing more disturbing than quiet during a conflict. You waited. You were watching. You felt the weight of their attacks and wondered when they would confront what they had done. They moved furiously, certain they were untouchable. And you remained quiet. Not because you were weak, but because you were knowledgeable. They did not. Real power does not haste. They believed they had won. They mistook quiet for capitulation. I assumed your quiet meant you had nothing left. But this is where they made a critical error. They did not grasp that quiet is a strategy, not a failure. When someone is engaging in a filthy game, the worst thing you can do is interfere. Allow them to dig their own hole. Let them believe they have escaped. Allow them to feel comfortable in their life. Because when they feel they have won, they are most susceptible. And now they have revealed everything. Every plot, every treachery, every action they took against you. Everything is out in the open now. They were so sure in their achievement that they didn't realize they were being followed the whole time. They were so bent on dominating you and bringing you down that they failed to see the trap was not created for you. It was made for them. There are no more places to flee. They assumed you were impotent since you didn't fight back. They assumed they had the upper hand since you didn't react. But the stillness is choking them. The walls are closing in their own deeds, words, and hubris. Everything is crumbling on top of them. And the greatest part? They did this upon themselves. See? Silence is not weakness. It requires patience. It's allowing them to reveal their real colors before the last strike. And now, as their world crumbles, they finally realize they were not winning. They were marching right into their own demise. Number 8. When life prevails against a heritage of evil, they believe they were scripting your ending. However, all they did was sign their own death certificate. Some individuals spend so much time scheming your ruin that they forget they're standing on the edge of the cliff. Your adversaries were not merely out to harm you. They tried to eliminate you. This was not about little inconveniences or transitory obstacles. No, they wished to wipe away totally. They were not pleased with watching you struggle. They intended you to fall and never rise again. They believed that if they damaged your name, reputation, and peace, you would disappear. However, in their fixation with bringing you down, they made a catastrophic error. They shone a spotlight on their own gloom. The more they yelled at you, the more others paid attention. And no one remembers them for their accomplishments, only their dishonor. They base their whole existence on power, control, and manipulation. But power fades. Control lapses and falsehoods always unravel. The very foundation they stood on was breaking beneath their feet, and they spent their time digging your grave. They had no idea how deep they were digging themselves. Your name is still increasing. Your presence is greater than ever, but they are already a ghost, living in the aftermath of their own devastation. They believed that history would remember them as the victor, the one who took you down. Instead, they leave a legacy of failure and dishonor. Their deeds had exposed them. People who formerly stood with them are now turning their backs. They flaunted the same power. Gone. The name they attempted to protect. Now it's just a cautionary tale. They didn't expect you to be so resilient. You didn't just survive. You thrived. Every strike they hurled at you became gasoline. Every effort to break you boosted your strength. They have set out to ruin you. However, they just scripted their own finale. And as time passes, their name fades into obscurity, while yours becomes a symbol of survival, fortitude, and triumph. Number 9 is the sudden fall when God strikes without notice. They spent years creating their deceptive empire, piling their lives like bricks, believing they had created something unbreakable. However, the higher they went, the further they had to fall. And when the time came, they didn't just stumble. They dropped. They assumed time was on their side. They felt that they could influence, deceive, and control indefinitely. Their hubris rendered them blind. They mistaken ephemeral triumph for longevity. They believed themselves that if nothing had occurred yet, nothing would ever happen. However, this is a common error among destroyed civilizations. They forget that the collapse does not occur gradually. It occurs instantaneously. They were invincible one minute and in charge the next, sitting in authority and feeling invincible. The next, everything disappeared, their status and control, their false superiority, gone a mere heartbeat. That was the part they didn't see coming. They believed that if they ever fell, it would be slow, that they would have time to heal, to transfer blame, to devise an escape plan. But when the time came, there was no warning. There is no lifeline, no escape. The chosen ones. You've always understood how this works. You have seen it happen before. You've seen individuals climb by dishonesty, believing they can alter reality. But reality always has the last say. The instant they imagined they were immune to repercussions, they sealed their own doom. They chuckled at the quiet. They misunderstood the patience for feeble. They believed they had won. And that is precisely why their downfall is so devastating. Because that was the last thing they anticipated. Their empire, prestige, and influence. It collapses so quickly that they don't have time to respond. One day they are feared, revered, and obeyed the next. Nobody even picks up their calls. They spent their entire lives believing they had control. But the reality is, they were always on borrowed time. Number 10. Spiritual immunity that frustrates the wicked. They took their finest shot, unloaded their arsenal, and stood over you, waiting for the last breath to depart your body. Instead of fading away, you emerged stronger, sharper, and more dangerous than before. And now they're begging for oxygen. They believe they had you. They believe that the weight of their plots, the continuous attacks, and the havoc they cause would be enough to shatter you for good. They expected you to crumble like everyone else, to fracture under strain, to fold under the weight of it all. They flung it your way. But here's something they never understood. You're made differently. This is why their tactics failed. That is why, no matter how hard they tried, they were never successful. Because they were battling more than simply one individual. It was something beyond their comprehension. You have armor. They are unable to penetrate and have no explanation for their immunity. While they're deceptive and greedy, you move with purpose and resilience, which drives them nuts. They've seen others fall from far less. They've seen others break under the same strain they place on you. But you absorbed every strike, treachery, every attack. You still exist. That's what haunts them the most. They don't understand why their weapons don't work against you. Their dominance was always ephemeral. Their influence was founded on falsehoods. Their intentions were doomed from the beginning. The instant they put their eyes on you, they signed their own demise. And now, faced with the repercussions of their acts, they are mute. Because you're still here, still standing, still flourishing. You were never intended to lose this war. They were. And as they sit amid the wreckage of their own devastation, seeing all they constructed crumble in front of them, one reality will finally dawn on them. They shouldn't have come for you. Number 11, the double prison. When the body is locked, but the soul suffocates. They assumed that keeping you out would give them power. However, they are now the ones who are imprisoned up, not just behind bars, but also within their own imaginations. And unlike a jail term, there is no parole for remorse. Jail is more than just bars and walls. The actual prison is inside them, a long, suffocating punishment of their own creation. At first, they believed they had won. They celebrated. I was convinced they had wrecked, obliterated, and shattered you beyond repair. But the reality is settling in, and the weight is terrible. Yes, they may be imprisoned, losing their influence, power, and freedom. The mental jail, however, will be the most haunting for them. When the doors lock and the hush sets in, that's when the real punishment starts. Because the worst type of pain does not occur on the exterior. It's what consumes you from within. No more distractions. There are no more individuals to manipulate. No more phony authority to hide behind. It's just them, their thoughts, and the facts they worked so hard to conceal. Each lie they told, every betrayal, they always believed they were untouchable. It all plays out in their minds like a never-ending movie. And this time, they can't get away from it. Because this is something they never understood. Power does not come from putting people down. Resilience is what gives you power. From the truth. From the power to rise despite any onslaught. That is why you, the chosen one, remain standing when others disintegrate. They attempted to take your freedom, soul, and very being. However, they ultimately imprison themselves. The worst part, there is no amount of money, legal tactics, or backroom agreements that will rescue them from this punishment, since you can leave a jail cell. However, you cannot escape yourself. Meanwhile, you continue to ascend unscathed, unshaken, and free, while others languish in the cage they created for themselves. You continue forward, demonstrating yet again that those who attempt to bury the chosen ones simply end up digging their own graves. Number 12. God's justice is surgical and it hurts deeply. They felt they had mastered the game, but it was always rigged against them. Consequences do not strike unexpectedly. They strike like a sword, sharp, accurate, and directed squarely at the weakest point of their dominion. When individuals believe they have gotten away with everything, lies, manipulation, betrayals, the true reckoning begins. It does not appear in random chaos. It does not arrive in a wild wrath. It comes with surgical precision, the type of disadvantage that doesn't just deprive people of what they have. It shatters their illusions about themselves. See, revenge is messy. It reaches out and destroys everything in its path, causing collateral harm. But genuine justice, true justice, is accurate. It does not merely affect their wealth, influence, or prestige. It is for the one thing they never imagined they would lose: their identity. That is the error they made. They assumed they had permanent control, that their wealth, connections, and influence would always keep them safe. But now they're witnessing everything slip through their fingertips. And the worst part? They don't know how to stop it. Their ruin lies at the heart of who they are. They're losing the very thing that defines them. If they formerly thrived on power, they are now impotent. If they built their lives around falsehoods, they are now being revealed. If they believed they could influence everyone, they're now being played. This is not a random penalty. This is a fantastic lesson. And it's not only for them. It is intended for the entire audience. Every ally who stood with them, every individual who thought they were unstoppable, they're all experiencing the collapse in real time. And once it's finished, no one will see them the same way again. You see, it was never about destroying them. It was about restoring equilibrium, about showing that no matter how far they went or how much they built on lies, their rule would eventually come to an end. And just like that, the game ended. They believed they were untouchable, that their authority was permanent, and that they ruled over everything, even you. But now they are drowning in the debris they created. Every action they took against you just accelerated their demise. You didn't need to move a finger because the truth always takes care of itself. If you've ever been misjudged, attacked, or deceived, leave 77 comments like subscribe lib and spread this message, because the selected never fall. We ascend.